And so you know how it is. Like at some point, this really gets in your bones, and then the book becomes just a natural extension of what you've been living. And so the origins of the generosity of scars really came from, like, no kidding, my darkest, deepest moment, standing in a closet, holding a pistol, ready to hit the go button on something that I'd been thinking about a long time. Storytelling is not reserved for actors. It is not reserved for the elite. We are all empowered to tell our own stories. And whatever version we decide to do that, a book, a memoir, a stage, around a campfire, but most of us are not doing it, and it's killing us. So I started thinking about, when I wrote Operation Pineapple Express, and we did that, we were one of many groups that did rescue. I don't even like to call it a rescue, because it was more of a collaboration effort to try to get our allies out. And we didn't go overseas. But the work that these veterans did with our Afghan allies, who were the real heroes. As I started to work that story into my bones, you know what? Like, if I go tell this story to a group of veterans, now I'm the helper and they're the beneficiary. And there's this beautiful evolution that happens. That's what I call the generosity of scars, when we can repurpose our struggles in the service of other people through the stories.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now, and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Scott Mann, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I think this is your 4th time on. Very cool. Very cool. Very excited to have you. And we're going to talk about 11 Days, right? Your new play that's out. And then you've got a book coming out called Generosity of Scars. I'm super excited for that. Love being on Rooftop Leadership, by the way. Thanks. For people that don't know what Rooftop Leadership is, can you explain it real quick? Because I'm enjoying it like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I've always, so my methodology for leadership, I've always called it rooftop leadership. And if you've read Nobody's Coming to Save You, at the beginning of that, I talk about where I came up with that term. I did a TED talk on it, a TEDx talk in Santa Barbara. But basically, it's this idea that something that Green Berets do that I've always been super fond of is they go to places where there's no trust, and they build trust one day at a time, one engagement at a time, when nobody's looking, when risk is low. And then when the stakes go up, those same people that they built trust with, even though they're scared and they're afraid and they'd much rather be with their families, they go up on the rooftops of that village alongside those bearded Green Berets, and they fight alongside them, not because they have to do it, but because they choose to do it. And it's the social capital, it's the rapport, it's the reciprocity that is built in the days, weeks, and months leading up to the event. And we've lost that in the world. We've lost, and it's actually, it's what we're supposed to do. It's actually, we're social creatures, Mike. We don't have fur, fangs, or claws, right? So we survive and we thrive by our relationship portfolio. And rooftop leadership, I believe there's a methodology to it. There's both an art and a science to it. I've spent decades working on it. So I started a community on School, SKOOL, to just bring people together from all walks of life who see what's going on in the world. And they're like, I think there's a better way to do this. And then we collaborate on and support each other on rooftop leadership, on human connection.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I cannot thank you enough for allowing me to be a part of it. Some of the people that I've met, I mean, and I've been on some of their podcasts and that kind of thing, it's a great group. And what it is a whole bunch of people that are focused on leading, and they're focused on making this world a better place. You know what I mean? And that's been your core thing from when you were 14 years old and you decided you were going to be a Green Beret. I mean, that's sort of your theme of your life, and everything you're doing is a value add, you know? And that's part of what I love about you, bud. You know, the fact that you are bringing it in all of these different channels and these different ways, right, is a real reflection. It's a real reflection of you and your life's mission, and you and Monty. I mean, Monty, of course, is is your wife and is sort of the chief of everything, right?
No, not sort of.
Right. I mean, she says jump, we ask how high, right? That's literally the way this thing works.
Yeah.
So let's talk for just a second, if we could, about 11 days. And let's preface this real quick. So let's go back. So you have this play that you wrote that called Last Out. And the play is about, well, you tell us. So you had never written a play before. You had never acted in a play before. You had never, right? But somehow you discovered, I guess is the best way to put it, right? That writing a play and having that play acted out gave you an opportunity to connect in a way that you weren't necessarily able to connect in other ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Talk about that for a second.
And you know, the thing is, Mike, that's not unique to being a Green Beret. It's not unique to being a soldier. You know, it's storytelling, honestly. Yeah. And what I have learned in my journey is that, you know, we're very primal creatures, and our brain has a mandate to make sense of the world. It does. And it uses storytelling to make sense of things, and particularly the things that don't make sense, right? Like war and grief and survivor's guilt, which I was suffering from massively when I came home from my last deployment and then retired in 2013, and had a very bad transition, and just a mental health just went into the abyss, really, because I lost purpose, I lost identity. The way the country was so divided here at home, I looked around and I thought, man, like, what was the point, you know? And so
this is what I fought for, I think, is something you said, right?
This is what we did. You know, we went over there and you know, gave away most of our youth. Some of our friends gave away a hell of a lot more than that. And then we're just tearing each other apart right here at home. You know, what was the point of that? And so I really went into a dark place on that. And it was storytelling that saved my life as a modality for healing, because storytelling is a sense-making tool. And I had a few mentors who presented it in my life at just the right time. Now, I've always been a bit of a storyteller, come from Appalachia. My dad's a great storyteller. His father was, but it was all instinct, right?
Yeah.
I'd never used storytelling as a modality for healing or making sense of things that didn't make sense, like survivor's guilt and moral injury. But now I was being presented with a way to do that.
Yeah.
And at some point, my mentor, one of them, his name's Bo, former NFL football player turned playwright, turned actor, turned speaker. He had written a one-person play, and he kept bugging me to write a one-man play about my experiences in the war. And he kept saying, this is a way to just heal yourself. And eventually I just did it to kind of, I don't know, to maybe show myself that I could do something different. You know, I don't know what I was thinking. In a way, I guess I saw it. I did see some version of it being performed. And the weird part was, it was me doing it. I thought, it's crazy, man. I'd have never been on stage, but they kept getting stronger, kept getting stronger. Eventually I put pen to paper, and, you know, people come to your aid, man, when you're building something bigger than yourself. I had playwrights. I even had a writer from The Last of the Mohicans help me put this thing together. And at some point it was called Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret. And I thought, okay, you know, then I told my wife, Monty, I want to perform in it. She's like, you've got to be kidding me. I was 50 years old, had never acted. And I started studying acting in New York. I would sneak up there and work with Carl Bury and Larry Moss and Jason Cannon down in Sarasota, and just kept studying. Eventually we found a cast completely in the blind, all veterans and military family members, and then loaded up in a U-Haul van and put 28,000 miles on it, man. Traveled all over the country doing this play. And it was crazy, because what I learned along the way was that storytelling is not reserved for actors. It is not reserved for the elite. We are all empowered to tell our own stories. And whatever version we decide to do that, a book, a memoir, a stage, around a campfire, but most of us are not doing it, and it's killing us.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's something that you get out, right? So at one point you're handing out flyers for the first thing of last out. And Monty turns to you and says, "Why are we doing this?" And you said, "If I don't do this, I'm going to die."
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I felt.
So,
yeah. And she was, you know, because it was bringing up so much up with us, you know, she had buried a lot of stuff so that we could move forward with our life, because, you know, our military families go through a ton that they don't even tell their husbands or spouses about, because they want to keep them, you know, focused on the mission. And same with my kids. We all were, it's a 20-year war, man. Like, so we're all carrying these massive loads, and they had not been resolved, which is not good. And it was conjuring, writing the story and putting the play on its feet was conjuring up a lot of this, because she was helping me. She's like, "Why are we doing this?"
yeah.
And I literally told her, I said, "Because I'm going to die if I don't. That's how I feel."
Yeah.
And then she looked at me and she said, "Well, I guess we have a play to do then, don't we?" And we did. And so she was my partner on every bit of that. And I have to tell you, it was phenomenal. And we did a couple of tours. Gary Sinise ended up sponsoring us at some point in 23. We toured like 40 cities. It's still going. I'm not in that cast anymore, but I'm still the executive producer of it. And at some point after I wrote Operation Pineapple Express, about the botched withdrawal, I told my wife, I said, I think I want to do a one-man show with this. And she was like, "Wow, okay." And it's been 4 years since it came out, I think, over 4. And so, yeah, last Thanksgiving, we started writing, and we started rehearsals late summer. And in December 17 through 20 in Tampa, Florida, we will world premiere 11 days, the story of Operation Pineapple Express, that I will perform in a 75-minute one-act play.
Okay. So let's talk about the play itself. Go through sort of the beginning to the end, so to speak, right? If it's okay, just kind of preview it for people so that they get a feel for, because we now know what the background is, right? Sort of the backstory, if you will, the history, you know? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So I started thinking about, you know, when I wrote Operation Pineapple Express, and we did that, we were one of many groups that did rescue. I don't even like to call it a rescue, because it was more of a collaboration effort to try to get our allies out. And we didn't go overseas. But the work that these veterans did with our Afghan allies, who were the real heroes, by the way, in this sense, and the men and women that were on that wall, the Marines, the paratroopers. I wrote the book in third person. I was reluctant to write it. My dad really talked me into writing it, because I felt like I don't want this to be some memoir of my time, you know, because my time was over. I was done. I'd been retired 10 years. I reluctantly got back into it because my friend Nizam was on the run, which is the reason a lot of us got involved. And it evolved, and we just kept getting sucked in deeper and deeper, because frankly, our institutions failed us. Right. Mm-hmm. And so the only reason I wrote about it was because it was such a moral injury heaped upon the shoulders of an entire generation of global war on terror warfighters and their families. I thought I owe that to them, to tell this story, to educate, to inform. And so I wrote it in the third person. I wrote the book in the third person. So if you've read it, it kind of reads like Dunkirk. Yeah, but
it's how we met.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Literally, I listened to your book on audiobook, right? And immediately reached out to you. And I was a combination of impressed, blown away, upset.
Yeah.
I mean, I had like this myriad of emotions when I finished that book.
A lot of people do. And I think that's okay. I think that's appropriate, don't you? I mean, I think that's appropriate considering what happened, but it was swept under the rug.
Yeah.
We turned the page on a 20-year war and on our veterans and on our allies. And I just thought, I'm not good with this. And I think a lot of people are not good with this.
Yeah.
I think that's why it became a number 1 New York Times bestseller in one day, not because of my writing prowess, but because a lot of people just feel like, you know what, this isn't okay. Like, you know, this story needs to be told. And so the book is a third person. But when I started thinking about the play, I was talking to Jason Cannon, who is my director, and basically just co-collaborate on everything. And Jason's just a wonderful artist. And we were talking back and forth, and he said, well, how do you see the one person play flowing? And this was last year. And I thought, I testified to Congress, to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and it got a lot of views and everything. And I said, but I have to tell you, I left there feeling really, really pissed off. Like it was grandstanding. They did not give really Tyler Vargas and Doc Gundy and me and others the platform that it deserved. It didn't feel right. And he said, well, there you go. He goes, let's put you in the rubble and at your campfire at the same time behind your house where you did most of this work. And let's testify for real this time. So that is the backdrop of the play. It's past, it's, however many years past. I'm sitting in my backyard, but there's rubble from Abbey Gate all around me. So we're in both places, and I am now the protagonist, which I'm okay with now for this, because I am testifying to heal the moral injury of what happened. So I'm talking about the shit that didn't get talked about on Capitol Hill, didn't get talked about on the news, and in many cases didn't even get talked about in Pineapple Express. And so that's the backdrop, that's the flow of it. It's one act, and I play like 18 characters.
Wow. So now that you've written the play, you're in rehearsals right now, right? Getting ready to really light this candle, so to speak.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how you feel. And what I mean by that is Operation Pineapple Express created for me, an emotional response. Nobody's Coming to Save You created a intellectual response, emotional and intellectual. I mean, when you talk about the churn, and I've told you this before, you're onto something. This is a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
And so now you have Last Out. Last Out's on tour. People are doing their thing. You're still the executive producer. You're getting the word out, so to speak, right? 11 Days is unique. It's different.
Yeah.
Talk about your emotional response to this.
What a good, thoughtful question. You're a brilliant questionologist. It's really, really cool. Because what I found is, and this is what I told Jason, my director, about this work, the reason I love it so much is I'm out in the garage right now. This is where I'll kind of hold it up. Like this is where we train. Like there's our tee down there. I don't know if you can see it. But I mean, it's just really Spartan space. Like I'll literally, do a workout and then I'll roll into some scenes. The reason is because there is such emotional tension around this series of events. And what happens is, this is what happens in storytelling, and this is why most people avoid storytelling, is because the stories that are really powerful within us, usually things that shaped us, events, moments in our lives from our childhood, are usually attached to high emotions, trauma, grief. And so we don't know our body. We don't know what to do with those. In the modern world, in the churn, we're conditioned to push that down, button that up, and do not let that be seen in public. And so we just button it up, and everybody's walking around all buttoned up. And now, we have these dopamine dispensers that we carry around, and you have filters now that can actually filter your emotion. And so how do I talk about my emotions? What's happening for me right now is, as I work through these scenes, I'm literally unpacking in my body the emotional attachment to the moment. And, some of it is very sad. Some of it makes you angry. Some of it, I rant and rave and I scream and I kick shit. And I'm like, it's just different things. But at the end of the day, it's all appropriate because I'm in a safe space. The events have already happened. They are resolved. I've done therapy And so now I'm putting these scars into the service of others. I want to tell this story. It's not about me at all. It's about those Afghan allies. It's about those veterans. And more importantly, it's about the audience who needs to make sense of this in their own way, autobiographically listen and locate themselves in the story. And in order for them to locate themselves in the story, I have to be completely generous. I have to give all of myself to that story, which means I got to get all the tension out of my body. So I have these emotional responses. They blow in, they blow out like the wind. I don't lock them down. I just let them flow through, and I'll have them in the play. And, but the beautiful part is it's optimal health, Mike. And again, I am not a classically trained actor. I'm not, and I don't claim to be. What I am is an average dude that has had experiences in his life who has chosen to tell those stories with generosity. And you got to train to do that. But the emotional point of view is the coolest part, because in doing this quiet work out here by yourself, as you storytell, you discover emotional points of view, like for Nizam, and you try to go into his shoes, what that must have felt like standing in that crowd of thousands with no food and water, wondering if you would ever make it out alive. Or Razik, whose three little girls are there with him and they're being beaten by the Taliban, and Steve, who's on the other line, hearing these little children getting beaten, and you drop into that and you take on those emotional points of view, and what happens is just it expands your world. And now, as a storyteller, your ability to help others see with a shared perspective, there's no ceiling. And so it's terrifying. It's hard. It's the hardest work I've ever done, but it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life, including Special Forces.
So for people that haven't read Operation Pineapple Express, will you take just a second and explain who Nizam is?
Yes. So Nizam was an Afghan commando and Afghan Special Forces and U.S. trained Green Beret. He went to our qualification course and was a very, very dear friend of mine, is a very dear friend of mine, and was very, very well loved in the special ops community as a partner. And he was on the run in Afghanistan in the spring of 2021 when the country was starting to fall. I had been away from Afghanistan for almost 10 years, but Nizam and I maintained a friendship. And so when Afghanistan, I didn't even have a security clearance anymore, still don't. And when Afghanistan started to collapse, Nizam reached out to me, and I connected with other veterans who knew him and loved him. And we basically helped move him through the streets of Kabul and the crowd, and getting him on a plane using relationships and cell phones. And then ultimately connections.
Back channels, basically, right?
Channels. Yep.
Yeah.
And then ultimately parlayed that into an operation at scale. Once we made connections with select individuals on the wall at Abbey Gate and other places, we went to scale it, and then we were able to bring close to 1,000 out.
So Nizam and his family made it onto the base, made it onto the plane, which was a major victory.
I thought that was it.
Well, really, he's the flashpoint, right?
He's passenger number one.
Yeah, he's the person that when you look at him and look at he and his family, they are exactly the example of what we did 30,000 times over.
Yeah.
In terms of the people that we just left there. We told them that we were going to do something, if they helped us, we were going to help them, and we were going to bring them and all this. And we just turned our back and pulled the plug.
Just left them to, many of them have been executed in front of their families. Many of them have disappeared into holes in the desert. I mean, it is a level of wholesale abandonment that will plague us for years, if not decades.
Guaranteed.
And so this play makes that very clear. But yeah, that was Nizam, and then we scaled it up. And so what I will say about the play is there's no way you can do all the characters. Even if you did a 2.5-hour movie, you couldn't do all the characters from Pineapple Express. So we selected a few, we've combined a few others. And the idea is that when you come see this play, you will want to go out and read Pineapple Express for yourself, or read it again, or listen to it, because you're going to have an emotional point of view now that you simply did not have before. You just didn't. And so, because theater is just about the only medium that can impart an emotional point of view to that level, or storytelling, oral storytelling. You should come, man. I hope you and your family can come. We'd love to have you guys during the premiere.
I'd love to be there, bud. I'd love to be there. Just got to make it work with the schedule, you know? So can you take a second? In Last Out, after the play is over, there's a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hour thing that happens. And I'm going to share with you something that I've observed here. You and I have known each other now for a little while. Mm-hmm. I think that thing that happens after the play reached you in a way that nothing else ever has. Can you talk about that for a second? Because I think that lit your fire even more than before.
Talking about the talkbacks and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's for sure, man. I mean, there's so many. I mean, we performed in probably 40 cities, and multiple performances in each one. And you think about who's in those audiences. I mean, everything from, Gary Sinise to Sean Ryan, to Afghans that we helped rescue, to Gold Star mothers, to Gold Star daughters, to double amputees, like Vietnam veterans, Korean War veterans, World War II veterans, the children of World War. I mean, my God, remarried Green Berets whose wife never experienced the war, but they experienced their husband waking up to night terrors every night, swinging. It's on and on and on. And so we would do these talkbacks. We do these talkbacks after every show. We'll do them for 11 days too, where the actors sit with the audience up on the stage and they just talk. And it was profound for me. It changed my life in so many ways. I thought the talkbacks, because this was the advice I got, were developmental tools as we were first rolling the play out to make the play better, which they were. But they kept going, third year into the tour, we're still doing them because the community has so much to say once they've experienced storytelling. And this is my point to anybody listening to this. It doesn't matter if you're in theater or not. Storytelling allows us to develop shared perspective of the other party that we would never have. And it bridges trust gaps in ways that no other form of communication can. And the problem today, one of the major problems, is that there is no storytelling happening at community and collective levels at all. And as a result of that, you have all of these self-told stories in people's brains that are wildly wrong and inaccurate, and they are fed by fear. Because there's an old saying that says you cannot hate the storyteller. And so once we would sit down in these forums, Mike, and my God, the stories were so powerful. And I would just sit there and listen and just weep sometimes. But they changed me profoundly because it made me listen. And storytellers are the best listeners. And that's what I loved more than anything else, was after the play was just sitting and being with the audience, and just listening to what they had to say. And they had a lot to say.
Well, it's cathartic for them. And going to that play lights it like brings something out in them, right? It kind of lights a fire. And then afterwards, they have an opportunity to get things off their chest that they haven't talked about in decades.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it gives the people, like you said, around them context in terms of these are the things that happened. There are a lot of people that I know, me included, that know people that are military veterans that never talk about their service. They never talk about combat. They never talk about what they experience because it's just too painful. And they almost feel guilty. It's why we have the suicides we have. This isolation, this feeling of guilt, this feeling of I was told to do this and I did it, but I wish I hadn't, right? Is a real thing. And what you're doing and what I feel like is so invaluable to, and I'm not just talking about, Last Out, but I'm talking about all of them, including 11 days and generosity of scars, everything. You're reaching people that need to be reached.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I do feel that way, and I attribute a lot of that to my dad. He was always about leaving tracks. That was his main motto, about leaving our legacy on this planet. And what I've kind of adopted, my metric for how I navigate the world is relevance. And am I relevant to the person across from me? Am I relevant to their goals? And am I relatable to their pain? And if I'm not, then I'm really not in a position to be effective. I'm really not in a position to make an impact. And I'm so grateful for that, because that was what these NCOs and junior officers taught me in special forces. It's what my father taught me. And along the way, I feel like I've become obsessed with it, and particularly human connection and storytelling. And yeah, I feel like I have found some answers to what really is driving us crazy about the world today. But the interesting thing is, the answers are what our grandparents knew to be true. Like, it's not, I didn't come up with them. I've kind of brought together the world of influence, where neuroscience is telling us stuff now that we never were able to get before. And it's mapping exactly onto what our great grandparents and their ancestors knew to be true. Yeah. Which is that we are meaning-seeking, emotional, social storytellers who struggle. We're a mess. But within that construct resides the lenses and the levers that we need to move people to action, to get big stuff done. And it's innate. It's within us. Yeah. We've just buried it. And so all the stuff we're talking about here is a way to unbury it. Yeah. It's not putting more on. It's taking the plates off. And anybody who hears that, they're usually like, yeah, that, because that's what we all feel like. I feel like I've got so much armor on, and so much that I'm so armored up, like I don't even know what's real, and for me, it's just so liberating to just take the plates off and just, this is who I am. I'm Scott. I'm Rex and Anita Mann's son. That's who I am. And that's all right. Like but that's who I am. And here's what I've learned so far. Like, that's it. And I think if we could just come to that place, using some of these techniques, man, people would be surprised of what's available to them.
Well, the beautiful thing about what you're doing is you're bringing, for lack of a better term, you're bringing therapy to people that really need it, and people that are sort of on the outside looking in. With you, they feel like they're on the inside looking out. And that's a real talent. That's a real gift. And yes, I've watched your dad on his TED Talk or TEDx Talk, whatever it was, but the speech that he gave, and there's not a whole lot of degrees of separation between you and your dad, right? I mean, it's like, wow.
Thank you.
And what's fascinating to me is you've taken something that, honestly, between you, me, and the gatepost, nearly ended your life.
Yeah.
And you've flipped it. I mean, this is a real acknowledgement, right? You've turned this thing into something that, you've turned this thing that was incredibly negative and almost life-ending into something positive that is saving lives.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that?
It's sometimes it just floors me. Like I'll look at Monty, like we went to see the play recently, Last Out, and now I'm sitting in the audience, right? I'm sitting in the audience as a playwright with my wife, and I'm watching this play in real time, and I'm watching the people around me, and I just like, man, like this thing was birthed with me standing in a closet holding a pistol under my chin, you know, and look at this, like, but it's more about because I am in awe of storytelling. I am in awe of what it offers us. You know, what we know about the brain is that it has this mandate to make sense of the world, and it uses story to do it. And the story structure, the basic story structure, is essentially struggle to resolution, right? And so it's the things that scuff us up, the things we go through, and how we come through them. Notice I didn't say overcome them or succeed. A lot of times we fail, but we're still here, and so we changed along the way, and we learned something. And so that struggle to resolution model is the oldest form of communication on the planet. It's the oldest, like it's a form of learning that is so authentic, and we don't use it anymore. Now leaders get up here and they're like, here's 5 ways to be great like me. And it's like, it's unwatchable. But
let me tell you how awesome I am, right?
Yeah, check this out. Just go on Instagram, Facebook, and watch these influencers. Like, here's the 3 ways that, here's the life hacks. And it's like, wait, dude, I don't even know who you are or what you've been through, but I can't, you know, how do I even know you're real? It's struggle. We locate each other in struggle. And that's one piece. And then the other piece is, and you hit on this, is in storytelling, there's 2 basic participants. There's the beneficiary and there's the helper. In the beginning, when we first tell our stories and we start to take the armor off, we're the beneficiary. When I first told my story about the closet, and that I was the beneficiary, and the people in the circle around me were the helpers, listening. But then as I started to work that story into my bones, you know what? Like if I go tell this story to a group of veterans, now I'm the helper and they're the beneficiary. And there's this beautiful evolution that happens. That's what I call the generosity of scars. When we can repurpose our struggles in the service of other people through the stories that we tell based on our own lived experiences and struggles, man, like that's when all the stuff comes off the fuselage and you can get airspeed. And because we're just so weighted down today, that's the stuff that takes the armor off.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your new book, Generosity of Scars, and why it's so important. We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com. And it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. And we're back with Scott Mann, and we're talking about how we can sort of release all of these through storytelling, right? We can sort of release all of these, for lack of a better term, sandbags that are holding our hot air balloon, right? Our lives from lifting. And it's amazing how when you start talking about the things that have scarred us in the past, it's amazing how people connect with that, because there's something similar there, right? Like one of the things we talk about a lot, we've been doing this podcast now for a couple of years, and we're more connected technologically than we've ever been, but people feel more disconnected than they ever have. And they're literally almost desperate, Scott, for that connection. And when you're somebody who has been through a trauma, somebody who's been through something in life, and you've got all of this sort of, you know, the human response is you just trap it, right? You just shove it down, right? The thing is, it feels like it's this big.
Yeah.
Once you get it out though, right? And that's the magic of what you're doing, is you're giving people sort of the key to get this stuff off their chest and deal with the stuff that's trapped in there.
Yeah.
You wrote a book that's coming out next spring called Generosity of Scars. And I know we're going to come back and talk about it in detail in a future episode. Talk to us a little bit about the mindset and the inspiration behind it.
It's the second of 3 books that I'm putting out in a leadership series with Hachette. Nobody's Coming to Save You is the first. Generosity of Scars is the field manual for communicating through storytelling. And the third one is about our legacy and purpose, and it's called Leaving Tracks. And I co-authored it with my dad and finished it right before he died. So I'm really, honored to be able to put all 3 of them out. The second one you're talking about, Generosity of Scars, man, my publisher, Alex, he was so excited. I turned it in on Friday and he was like, good Lord, man. He's like, it's like you were born to write this book. And I said, in a way, I kind of was, because I've been telling this stories and working through this for 15 years almost now, and so you know how it is. Like at some point, this really gets in your bones, and then the book becomes just a natural extension of what you've been living. And so the origins of the Generosity of Scars really came from, like, no kidding, my darkest, deepest moment, standing in a closet, holding a pistol, ready to hit the go button on something that I'd been thinking about a long time. And I got as close. I think I got as close as I think I'd ever want to get. And to killing myself, and had a few things not happened, I would have. I'm convinced.
Your son came home with a friend.
Yeah. Yep.
You heard him walk in the front door.
Yep.
And it's like, what am I doing? Right. It's like all of a sudden it shocked you back to, right.
Yep. But that was, I'd never, like, it was so embarrassing and so dark for me. And at that point I was so lost and isolated. I never talked about it. I didn't talk about it to Monty. I didn't talk about it, certainly to my boys, nobody. And it happened that a few years later, not even that long, I was in New York with a friend of mine at a transition thing for veterans, and one of my old buddies confided in me that he was getting ready to check out, and I panicked, because I'm like, oh my God, like, because this guy didn't mess around, and I shared that story with him, and I could see him come back to me when he heard. It's like, what? And he could see that he wasn't alone. And I was embarrassed talking about it. It was, but we connected right there, and it brought us both together. And we both realized, all right, wait a minute here, hold on. And we just started talking, and it was enough, in that moment to bring him back with me. And it really was profound for me afterwards. He ended up getting help and does a lot of work with veterans now. And I just thought, wow, like, that was the most embarrassing moment of my life. And it just did that. And I started thinking about the storytelling work I was already starting to do. And I thought, man, this notion of struggle and stories of struggle where we repurpose them in the service of others, like, that's a real thing, and if we can get to that point where we're doing that, like, that's the ultimate form of social capital. It's the ultimate form of leaving tracks, because we all have those scars, scars in this case. What I mean are those indelible impressions on our soul of just living life where we've been scuffed up. And we take those moments and we put the stories around them of what happened and how we changed and what we learned, and we share them with complete generosity, giving all of ourselves in the service of the listener, and with no expectations, right? And then the wildest things happen. And that's what I ended up doing a TED Talk on years later, my last TED Talk. And it's really just blown into, I think, a whole way of storytelling that my hope is will really change people's lives, maybe even save some.
I think you've saved countless lives. I really do. Honestly, from where I am on the sidelines watching, unbelievable. Can you talk about something for a second? Because the idea of Generosity of Scars is you're sort of, just like you did with that friend of yours, you're sort of pouring your soul out, right? There's some vulnerability there.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of talk about vulnerability these days, and a lot of, Brene Brown has done a brilliant job with it. you hear it a lot in corporate America. Hey, thanks for getting vulnerable with us. And it's like, or someone will say, I'm about to get vulnerable with you. And I'm like, I personally, it doesn't resonate with me, because in my line of work, what I used to do, I cannot imagine sitting across from an Afghan Pashtun elder, tickling the trigger of his AK-47 and go, I'm getting ready to get vulnerable with you for a second. Like, that's a good way to get your jugular cut. But I think a lot of people in corporate America and in the business world would say the same thing. They're like, I can't just stick my jugular out and hope someone treats me with decency. I think that's a well-intended approach. The way I choose to look at it and the way I teach this in Rooftop Leadership is humans are social creatures. We don't have fur, fangs, or claws, but we sit on top of the food chain. Why? Because we are better than any other mammal on the planet at connecting. It's our superpower. We're wired for it. It's oxytocin, the trustworthiness molecule, courses within us. But there's the way to go about that, in my assessment, is not as the intention of I'm going to be vulnerable right now, is I'm going to be relatable right now. I'm going to show up in this moment right here, right now, with the intention of being relatable to you and doing everything I can so that you can relate to me, right? It just so happens that there's some very primal ways to do that work. When we do that, Mike, vulnerability comes alongside us in the absolutely appropriate way. And it allows us to be appropriately vulnerable, because the story of the closet, if I tell that story in front of a room of veterans from the global war on terror, that's going to be a very different tell than if I'm at a commercial bank in Manhattan with these buttoned up. I'll still be relatable. I'm not going to pull any punches, but I'm just not going to tell it the same way, because it's done in the service of the audience, and if I'm talking to a group of GWAT veterans, the way I serve them is different than the way I serve these bankers, because over time I build trust with them and I might go deeper, but in the beginning, I'm just not going to just take all the armor off and say, here it is. So I focus on being relatable. What are the pictures in their heads? What are their goals? What's their pain? What do they need? And I just think it's a much more relevant way to connect with people. And you're still vulnerable, but it's a byproduct of relatability rather than an intention itself.
I got you. Yeah. The question the question for me is, there are people that are going to want to emulate you. There are people that I guarantee you right now, including yours truly, are completely inspired by you and what you're doing. The idea of sort of putting it all out there, right, might hold some people back, where they might not be so generous with their scars.
Right. Yeah. And here's the thing on that, right? Here's where I go with that. And this is and I appreciate you saying that. And that what I would hope is that people's decision to do this is less about emulating me, because I'll let you down, is more and more about, because it's the most effective way to lead and inspire and teach and educate. And I'm serious about this, because I don't necessarily want people, I hope that they'll see me doing it and go, wow, I want to do that, what he's doing. Yeah. But then the research and the data and the science tells us that when we are relatable to another human, and when we tell stories in the service of the audience whose brain has a mandate to make sense of the world, and the brain is a story brain, they locate themselves in the story, right? So when they do that, it's called narrative transportation. And now all of a sudden they're in the story, like they're in Afghanistan, or they're in the hospital or the cancer ward. And now they start to do what's called autobiographical listening. They are listening autobiographically. So they're processing their own lived experience in the safety of your story. That is the generosity And that's why if you're reluctant to do that, then you are cheating the people you serve out of the opportunity to make sense of their own life. And if you want to do that, fine, right? But if you truly are a servant leader and you want to serve people, then stories are told in the service of the audience.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to get to. Thank you for going there.
Yeah, so that they can autobiographically listen and make sense. And the reward, now the return on investment for that, you're like, okay, well, what does that cost me? Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard, but the ROI is reciprocity. Period. Whether the reward is the audience is so drawn to you now as the teller that they want to run through walls, man. They are ready to listen. They are connected. There's perspective. And you're now in a position to influence authentically.
Yeah. And it really is a connection thing. It's like what we talked about at the beginning of the show, this episode. People want to connect. And when you tell your story and you're generous with your scars, like you said, as a servant leader, you bring them along with you and they see themselves in that story. They see themselves in what you, right? Like one thing that you talk about a lot, and I mean, there are a lot of things. There's a whole laundry list of things that I admire about you. But one of the things that you talk about a lot, and I love, is that your struggle is your relatability.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is, but I think that's, and you know what's great about that is that's a universal singular. It's universal for all of us. That the reality is struggle. Think about it this way. Daniel Coyle really explains it brilliantly in the Little Book of Talent. He says that when the brain is confronted with new challenges, right? Whether that's learning how to do a jump shot, or whether that's moving to a new school or starting a job or learning a new task on the job, or the news that you've lost a loved one, right? Any new challenges that the brain faces, it has to build new neural pathways to deal with that. And that clunky, ugly, terrible feeling is struggle. Mm-hmm. And so if you subscribe to that definition, and I do, then struggle isn't something that happens to a few unlucky souls. It is a biological necessity. It happens to all of us. Mm-hmm. And I talk about this in Nobody's Coming to Save You to try to like knock some walls down and go, look, it's a universal singular. That's why the best trust accelerant for leaders is to stand on struggle and integrate it into what you talk about. Your personal struggle, the struggle of the business, the struggle the country's going through. And because that's where people locate themselves. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, she's been through what I've been through. And now they're not throwing up these objections of like, I could never be like her, or, oh, she's just this or that. No, they're like, oh, wow, she's been through what I've been through. The walls come down. Yeah. And so struggle is a relatability tool. Mm-hmm. But yet the modern world, the churn teaches us to button up the struggle, push it down and hide it. And not only does it keep us from connecting with other humans, it isolates us, which kills us.
It puts us in hyper-partisan tribes.
Oh my God.
Where anybody who doesn't agree with you is the enemy. And there are people that aren't having Thanksgiving dinner with family now. And friends, like you mentioned in Nobody's Coming to Save You, that were friends for 3 decades. And now they're not friends anymore because of something that they posted on Facebook.
I call it shadow tribalism.
Come on, know?
Because tribalism in itself is not bad. Tribalism is just a form of informal civil society. There's a lot about tribalism that's good. Hospitality, honor, relationships, storytelling, long form communication. There's a lot about tribalism that's good, but shadow tribalism is kind of all of the negative components of that informal world that we all hail from: feud, revenge, in-group, out-group, shame, all of those shadow elements that have now been hijacked by divisionist leaders who actually know how this works. That's the insidious part. And they foment instability between these in-groups and out-groups to advance a narrow agenda. That's what I call a divisionist or divisionism. Look around the world today and see if you don't see it. It's everywhere. And it's both sides of the aisle. Anybody who claims to have like some kind of moral superiority and a mandate to be a divisionist, be very afraid, because that is the ultimate divisionist right there. And again, it's on both sides of the aisle. This self-righteousness and moral superiority to practice divisionism is a one-way ticket off a cliff for a civil society.
Totally agree. Okay. So you finished on Friday, Generosity of Scars.
Yep.
How do you feel?
I've still got a couple more days, so I still have a few tasks, but I'm feeling like it's just, there's nothing in the world like the feeling of when you've poured your heart and soul into it. Because like this book, when I talked with my publisher about it, he's like, we need it quick. And I'm like, how quick? And he said, end of summer. It's like, oh my God, this was Memorial Day. And then, Dad got really sick and then he died. And so I was writing parts of this book in his ICU, and talking to him about it in his final moments. And so it's a very, 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 very special thing to me. And, there's a lot of pain experienced when I was writing this book. And I feel like that's appropriate, right? Because that's what this book is about repurposing our struggles in the service of others through the stories we tell. And so I feel blessed. I guess that's the only way I know to say it. I feel like God has blessed me to give me the opportunity to put this book into the world and serve some people. And now I'm like, I can put more time into the play. Well, ridiculous, but that's what I'm thinking is that, now I've got time to pour myself into my family and into the play more. And because I'm a creative, and if I'm not creating, I'm probably not happy.
Yeah. Well, the last interview that we did about the Gathering Storm, you were in a cabin not far from your dad's house that Monty had rented for you and just basically locked you away and said, you're writing, go.
Yep. Scar Story Creek is what I call it.
Yeah. Love that, man. Love that. So Generosity of Scars comes out when? Do we have a date?
Right around Father's Day. But the cool thing is, I think pre-order is going to be ready like any week now. And I'll let you know, but people can go ahead and pre-order it. If you like Nobody's Coming to Save You, it flows right from that. But if you didn't read it, this will still make sense. But and then it comes out right around Father's Day, which seems appropriate.
Well, for anybody who, like you said, is a servant leader and wants to get better at connecting with their people, get better at connecting with their family, get better at connecting with the people that are in their lives, friends, that kind of thing. This is essential. I mean, this is like the playbook as far as I can tell, right? And I know we'll have you back on to talk about it in specifics, but I love the fact that you're doing this as kind of a trilogy type thing, right? And the next one's leaving tracks. When's that one coming out?
It'll be probably a little less than a year from Father's Day. So the next spring. And I've even got some book ideas behind that one. But storytelling and human connection, Mike, are always what I'm going to be writing.
Yeah.
And my goal is to give your listeners the tools, like tangible, tactile tools that they can use in real time with their teenagers and with their spouse and in their community at the PTA meeting, and the stuff that makes Green Berets really, really effective at influence, but it's no longer the domain. The churn is no longer where the Green Beret lives. It's where we all live. And so instinct's not going to get us there anymore. We need these new tools, these old tools. And so, I'll keep cranking stuff out. I do hope people will come see the play, man. This thing's going to tour, but it's going to be a little different than Last Out. We're going to develop it. So it's going to be magic. December 17th through 20. I'm telling you, it's going to be special.
In Ybor City.
Yep, in Ybor City.
Where they make cigars, you can stand on the street and look in the picture windows and watch people make cigars, literally right in front of you.
Look, first of all, it's Tampa in December.
Yeah.
Not a bad gig. It's in Ybor City, old Tampa.
Yep.
There's wonderful food there. And then the other thing is during 17 through 20 December, there's going to be a lot of people, Ben and Jess Owen, Herb and Corey, like just Sarah Adams, like a lot of people coming to this show, plus a lot of characters from the book. You don't want to miss it. Like, I mean, this is one of those things that like people are coming from all over to see this, mainly a lot of them to see each other and to experience this together and sit together and testify for real this time. So yeah, man, I hope people will come check it out. It's going to be, if you go to tfpineapple.org, that's where you can find out about it.
I was just going to ask you. So TF and it's Tango Foxtrot.
Yeah.
Pineapple.org.
Yep. And then we'll also put it on my scottmann.com page.
Perfect. And then the book pre-orders, where do people get information about that? Is it scottmann.com?
Scottmann.com. Yeah. And one other plug I would throw out, you're in there with me right now on if you go to School of Rooftop Leadership on School, SKOOL, and I'll send you the link to Mike for show notes, but I would encourage people to go to that. It's a free community. We're going to go to paid tiers pretty soon, but you can get in there right now. It's a free community. It is a really special group of people.
It really is.
And I encourage anybody listening or watching this to get in there. And if any of this resonated with you, because that's really where we're putting information, everything lives. It's a true thriving community. And it's just a lot of fun. I hope people will get in there and get after it.
Is there anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think that's probably good.
Will you do me a favor? Will you tell Monty and the team I said hi?
Sure will, pal. Thank you for having me on again. It's not lost on me that you've allowed me this many opportunities to come on to such a rapidly growing and cool audience, man. It means a lot. Thank you.
Well, we have loved every second of it. You know that. And I can't wait to have you back on to talk about generosity of scars and leaving tracks and everything. So real quick, it's SCOTTMANN.com. SCOTT, so Scott, right?
Yeah.
MANN, there's two N's.com. I just want to make sure that people know where to go.
Awesome, man.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks again for being here.
All right, we'll see you.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.